I never thought one sentence could cut so deep. Not until I stood in the hallway of my own home, watching a 17-year-old girl I helped raise glare up at me like I was nothing. "You're not my real dad. You're just some guy," she spat, the words bouncing off the walls like bullets. "My name's Martin. I'm 45, and for the past 12 years, I've done everything I could to be a father to that girl." And yet, in the blink of an eye, she reduced it all. Every bedtime story, every scraped knee I patched, every school recital I showed up to with flowers in hand, to absolutely nothing. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning, before the disrespect, before the bitterness took root. Maybe then you'll understand why this whole thing still gnaws at me when I'm lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what I did wrong. I met Rachel, my wife, when I was 32. She had this dry, sarcastic wit and a laugh that came out in bursts, like she was surprised by her own happiness. She was also a single mom. Her daughter, Haley, was 5 at the time, big brown eyes, gap-toothed grin, and a mop of curly hair that refused to be tamed. I won't pretend I stepped into fatherhood overnight. In fact, Haley barely spoke to me the first 6 months Rachel and I dated. But I was patient. I didn't try to win her over with toys or empty praise. I just showed up, over and over again, helping with math homework, picking her up from daycare when Rachel worked late, learning how to braid her hair, badly, at first. Slowly, she let me in. When Rachel and I got married 2 years later, Haley walked down the aisle tossing petals in front of her mom, beaming like it was her wedding too. And I'll never forget what she whispered when I bent down to hug her afterward. "Can I call you Dad now?" My heart damn near exploded in my chest. For years, things were good. Not perfect, but good. We weren't some fairy tale, and there were bumps, especially when Haley would ask about her biological father, Greg. That was always a touchy subject. From what I knew, Greg had checked out before Haley could walk. No child support, no birthday calls, not even a card. Rachel told me he moved out of state and started a new family, and that was that. For the most part, Haley didn't ask much. But as she got older, maybe around 12 or 13, the questions got more pointed. Why doesn't he want to see me? Did he love me when I was a baby? Do you think he even remembers me? I tried to answer gently, never speaking ill of him, just telling her that sometimes grown-ups make mistakes and can't fix them. But part of me always wondered what she carried around, what silent hope she might still have that one day he'd show up out of nowhere and be the dad she never knew. Still, she called me Dad. She made me Father's Day cards. She made fun of my dad jokes, rolled her eyes at my lectures about curfews and safe driving, and came to me when her first boyfriend dumped her over text. I thought we had something solid, something real. That's why I didn't see it coming. It started subtly, like a slow leak in a pipe. Little things. One day she came home from school and slammed her bedroom door without saying hi. Okay, teenagers are moody. I remember being a jerk at 16 too. Then she stopped asking me for help with her essays, even though I used to proofread every single one. She started calling me Martin instead of Dad whenever she was mad, like it was a weapon she could draw on a whim. But I chalked it up to hormones, to teenage rebellion, to her trying to assert some kind of independence. I didn't want to read too much into it. Rachel noticed it too, but she brushed it off. "It's just a phase," she'd say half-heartedly. "You know how teens are. She'll come around." But there was a flicker of doubt in her eyes when she said it, like she was trying to convince herself as much as me. Then one night, about 6 months ago, I overheard her talking on the phone. She didn't know I was outside her door. I'd just gotten back from work, tired and already irritated because she'd left a pile of dishes in the sink after promising to clean them. I was about to knock and remind her when I heard her say it. "No, he's not my real dad. He's just some guy my mom married. Like, he acts like he owns the place just because he pays for everything. I didn't ask for him to raise me." The words hit me like a sucker punch. I backed away from the door slowly, trying to swallow the lump in my throat. I didn't say anything that night. I just sat in the living room with the TV on mute, staring at the screen while Rachel dozed off beside me. I didn't sleep a second. From that point on, things started unraveling faster. Haley grew colder. I'd ask her how her day was, and she'd shrug or say fine, without looking up from her phone. When I brought it up to Rachel, she tried to mediate, but Haley just insisted she was stressed from school or going through a lot. She started mentioning Greg more too, always in vague, nostalgic tones. I wonder what kind of music my real dad likes. Do you think Greg would have let me get a nose piercing? I kept my cool, but inside I was boiling. Not because she was curious about Greg, that was normal, but because it felt like she was trying to erase me. Like 12 years meant nothing now that she realized biology held some kind of magical weight. Then came the day of her high school graduation. Rachel and I sat in the front row, proud as could be. I even choked up when Haley walked across the stage. But when she came down, hugging her friends and taking pictures, she barely acknowledged me. One photo with her mom. None with me. She didn't even say, "Thanks for coming." I spent the whole ride home in silence, my stomach in knots. 2 weeks later, the bomb dropped. Haley came into the kitchen one morning with a pamphlet in hand. "So, I've decided I want to go to Bright Ridge University," she said, all businesslike. "And I need help with tuition." Bright Ridge was a private college 3 states away. Tuition ran close to $60,000 a year. My eyebrows shot up. "That's a great school," I said carefully. "But it's expensive. Have you looked into scholarships or financial aid?" She nodded. "Yeah, but I still need help covering the rest." "I figured you could help. You said you had money saved for me." I did. Rachel and I had a joint college fund we'd built over the years, mostly from my salary. I'd always assumed it would go to Haley, no questions asked. But now, sitting there, I felt something twist in my gut. Before I could respond, she added, almost casually, "I mean, you raised me. It's kind of your responsibility, right?" I stared at her. "Kind of my responsibility?" She blinked at me, confused by the tone in my voice. I leaned forward. "Haley, I need to ask you something. Do you see me as your dad?" She hesitated. "Well, technically no, but..." "No," I repeated. "You don't. You've made that clear. So why are you asking me to pay for your college?" She looked annoyed. "Because you've always provided for me. That's what you do." I shook my head, laughing under my breath in disbelief. "Right? I do. I have. Even when you told your friends I was just some guy. Even when you started calling me Martin like I was your mom's ex-boyfriend instead of the man who raised you." Her face hardened. "This isn't about that." I was mad. "I didn't mean it. But you said it. And you meant it enough times for it to matter." That's when Rachel walked in and asked what was going on. Haley didn't even wait for me to explain. She turned to her mom and said, "Martin doesn't want to help me with college. He said I should ask Greg." And that's exactly what I told her. Because maybe it was time Greg finally got to be the dad she thought he could be. Rachel's face went pale. Haley stormed out. And that was the beginning of something I couldn't undo. Rachel didn't say much that night. After the explosion in the kitchen, Haley had slammed the door to her room and cranked her music up so loud the bass rattled the cabinet doors. Rachel and I stood there, staring at each other across the breakfast bar, neither of us knowing what to say. I was still breathing hard. My heart wasn't just pounding from anger. It was from the weight of years crashing down at once. I had no idea how much I'd been holding in until that moment. And now that the dam had cracked, there was no patching it back up. "I think you were a little harsh," Rachel finally muttered, barely meeting my eyes. That was the spark. The final insult. I could have handled Haley's teenage delusions. I could have swallowed the disrespect, the name-calling, the revisionist history she was building in her mind where Greg was some hero and I was a glorified ATM. But what cut deeper than anything was Rachel standing there, watching me bleed emotionally, and offering me nothing but a passive shrug. "Harsh," I asked, my voice low and slow. "Rachel, I've been over backwards for that girl since she was 5. I've sacrificed raises, vacations, sleep, sanity, everything. I put my entire life on pause to give her stability, and she stood there and basically told me I'm nothing. And you think I'm the one who's being harsh?" Rachel sighed and rubbed her forehead. "She's confused, Martin. You know how teenagers are. She's trying to figure out her identity, where she comes from. This Greg thing. She's 17, I cut in. Not 7. If she's old enough to apply to college, she's old enough to be held accountable for what she says. I'm tired of being the emotional punching bag in this house." Rachel looked away, like she couldn't stand the sight of me. Or maybe it was guilt. I couldn't tell anymore. That night, I slept in the guest room. Not because we fought, but because I didn't want to be near someone who looked at my pain and saw inconvenience instead of injury. Over the next few weeks, the tension grew so thick you could practically chew it. Haley barely spoke to me. When she did, it was only when Rachel was around, and her tone was performative, like she was auditioning for the role of distant, wounded daughter. "Rachel, For her part, walked on eggshells. With Haley, she was tender, careful, overly accommodating. With me? Cold. Short. Like I'd kicked a puppy instead of finally standing up for myself. What made it worse was how Haley started playing the victim. She told extended family, Rachel's sister, her parents, even some of our neighbors, that I had refused to support her dreams. That I was punishing her for being curious about her real dad. That I threatened to cut her off just because she was trying to find herself. The worst part? People bought it. I got cold shoulders at Rachel's niece's birthday party. One of her aunts pulled me aside and whispered, "You know, Martin, just because she's not yours by blood doesn't mean you get to give up on her." Give up on her? I wanted to scream. I never gave up. I was pushed out. Then, just when I thought I couldn't feel more alien in my own house, I walked into the living room one afternoon and saw Haley sitting on the couch on a video call with Greg. My stomach dropped. She had her legs tucked under her, face glowing with excitement. "Yeah, I'm thinking of majoring in psychology," she said, twirling a strand of hair around her finger. "I know, right? You always said I was good at reading people." I stood frozen for a second, just long enough for her to glance up and lock eyes with me. Her smile faded. She didn't say anything, didn't introduce me, didn't even flinch. She just angled the camera away slightly, so I wouldn't be in frame, and kept talking. I turned around and walked right back out. Later that night, I asked Rachel when Greg had come back into the picture. "He messaged her on Facebook a few months ago," she admitted. "She told me not to say anything yet. She wasn't ready." "You weren't going to tell me?" I asked, stunned. "She's a young adult. It's her choice," Rachel replied defensively. I didn't think it was my place to intervene. I laughed. Actually laughed, because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You mean to tell me that the man who walked out on her is allowed to waltz back into her life unannounced, and I'm just supposed to smile and nod while she pretends I don't exist?" "She's building a relationship," Rachel said. "It doesn't mean she doesn't appreciate you." "She doesn't even like me anymore," I said. "She looks at me like I'm in the way. And you're enabling this. You let her sneak behind my back to reconnect with a deadbeat, and now you're pretending like I'm the one making it complicated?" "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." The silence that followed was worse than shouting, because silence meant neither of us had anything left to fight for. The real breaking point came 2 weeks later. Rachel and I had started therapy. It wasn't going great. I could tell she was checked out, going through the motions. But I figured if we just held on through the summer, maybe, just maybe, we could get back to what we had. Then one afternoon, I came home early from work. The house was quiet, which was unusual. No music, no clinking of dishes, no TV blaring. I walked in, dropped my keys, and noticed Haley's laptop open on the dining room table. Curious, I peeked at the screen. It was a tuition invoice. Bright Ridge University. Full balance due. Below that, a partially drafted email. "Hi Dad, just wanted to check if the wire transfer went through. Let me know if you need the routing number again. Mom said Martin might try to stop it, so let's keep this between us for now. Love, Haley." I stared at the screen for a full minute before my hands even moved. My palms were sweating. My heart was thudding like a drum. They went behind my back. They bypassed me completely. And they used money from the account Rachel and I built together. My income. The savings I started putting away when Haley was still in elementary school and wanted to be an astronaut. I walked straight into our bedroom and opened the drawer where we kept the joint savings info. Empty. I checked the closet. My old safe was gone too. When Rachel got home that night, I didn't even let her take off her coat. "Where's the college fund money?" I asked, my voice sharp but calm. Too calm. She froze. "What? Don't play dumb, Rachel. Where is it?" Because I saw Haley's email. "She's asking Greg if the transfer went through." "My money. Our money." She looked pale. Guilty, but not surprised. "I moved it," she said finally. "To a different account." "Why?" "Because you made it clear you weren't going to help her." "I made it clear I wasn't going to be manipulated by someone who treats me like trash." "That doesn't mean you get to steal from me." "It's not stealing. She's our daughter. She's your daughter. And you made that pretty damn clear." Her lip trembled. "I just wanted her to have a chance. I didn't want this stupid pride war to ruin her future." I stepped back like I'd been hit. This isn't about pride. It's about betrayal. From both of you. Neither of us slept that night. I called the bank the next morning and learned that yes, Rachel had drained the account 2 days prior. Without my consent. She'd been listed as a joint account holder, so technically, it was legal. But morally, it felt like someone had reached into my chest and ripped out 12 years of fatherhood, memories and all. I didn't confront Haley right away. I wanted to. God, I wanted to storm into her room and let her have it. But I didn't. Because deep down, some broken part of me still hoped she'd come to her senses. Still hoped she'd look at me and remember all those nights I stayed up with her during fevers, all the scraped knees, all the late-night runs for poster board the night before science fairs. Instead, she doubled down. A few days later, I heard her on the phone again. Yeah, it's done. Mom took care of it. No, he's still mad. But who cares? Honestly, I'm glad he showed his true colors before I left for school. Now I don't have to feel guilty cutting him off. That was it. That was the moment something inside me snapped so quietly, so permanently, that I didn't even feel anger anymore. I felt resolve. Cold, steady resolve. If they wanted to rewrite history, fine. But I still had a few pages left to write. And I was going to make sure they read every single one. You ever sit in a quiet house and feel like the silence is mocking you? That was me for weeks. Rachel and Haley were still living under the same roof, but it felt like I'd already moved out emotionally. We passed each other like strangers in an airport, polite, wordless, distant. The kind of silence that carries weight. That says more in what's not spoken than a full-blown screaming match ever could. I started sleeping in the guest room permanently. It was a small, stuffy space that doubled as Rachel's old home office, with a creaky futon and a single lamp that buzzed when it got too warm. I didn't care. It felt more honest. The main bedroom still smelled like her lotion and the citrus shampoo she used, and I couldn't stand being surrounded by that kind of history anymore. It wasn't home. It was a museum of what used to be. Haley didn't speak to me at all. No hi. No bye, nothing. She'd breeze in and out of the house like a ghost that only Rachel could see. The only evidence of her presence was the occasional thud of a suitcase or the sound of her talking on speakerphone to Greg, laughing like he was the best thing that had ever happened to her. Like he hadn't left her behind when she was still in diapers. Like he hadn't watched her grow up from the distance of complete indifference. I tried to drown it all out. Focus on work. On my clients. On tasks I could control. But even there, I started slipping. I'm an architect by trade. I design residential homes for a mid-sized firm. Not glamorous, but I'm proud of the work I do. Or I used to be. I'd always been the guy who stayed late tweaking renderings, refining beams, obsessing over measurements. But now, I'd stare at my screen for 20 minutes, caught in a loop of thinking about that tuition email, or the way Rachel looked away when she lied to my face, or Haley's voice, cold and dismissive, telling Greg she was glad she didn't have to feel guilty about cutting me off. I got called into my manager's office 2 weeks later. "Martin," he said gently, "I'm going to be real with you. You're off. You're distracted. And the Carmichael project? It's late and sloppy. That's not like you." I didn't make excuses. I just nodded and apologized. But as I left his office, something inside me started whispering, "You've got nothing left to lose, man." At first, I tried to ignore that voice. I thought maybe if I just waited it out, something would change. Maybe Haley would come to her senses. Maybe Rachel would apologize. Maybe Greg would mess up again and the illusion would shatter. But none of that happened. In fact, it got worse. I came home one night and the dining table was set for 3. Candles lit. Plates stacked. Real silverware, not the usual mismatched forks. I stood there for a second, confused, until I heard his voice. Greg, in my house, laughing. I walked in slowly, like I was in a dream. He was sitting in my chair at the head of the table, wearing some smug blue button-up, chatting with Rachel and Haley like this was some sitcom dinner. Haley was glowing. Rachel looked tense, but not surprised. Like she'd been expecting this moment and had rehearsed it. I didn't say a word, just turned around and left. I drove to a nearby park and sat in my car until it got dark. Then darker, until the street lamps clicked on and all the joggers went home and the only sound was the wind whispering through the trees. That night, I made a decision. I was done waiting for apologies that weren't coming. Done living in the shell of a life I'd built for a family that didn't see me anymore. I started small. First, I went to the bank and opened a new account, solo, under my name only. Then I set up a private P.O. box and started forwarding my important mail there. I pulled my personal items from the shared safe Rachel had relocated, and I ordered a new one for the guest room. I began logging receipts, tracking every household expense I paid from that point forward. I wasn't planning revenge yet. Not consciously, but I was drawing lines. Preparing. Next, I sat down and made a list of everything I used to love that I'd abandoned over the past decade. Woodworking. Sketching for fun. Running. I signed up for a woodworking class at a local shop. It was awkward at first. I was the only guy over 40 in the class, surrounded by enthusiastic 20-somethings with TikTok woodworking channels. But when I made my first dovetail joint, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Pride. Pure, unfiltered pride. That piece of wood didn't care if I was a stepdad or not. It just became what I shaped it into. I started running again too. Just a mile at first. Then 2. Then 5. I bought new shoes. Made a playlist. Hit the trail at 6 a.m. like it was a ritual. With every mile, the bitterness burned off. Sweated out of me. Not completely, but enough to start breathing again. I also started drawing, really drawing. Not just blueprints and elevations, but the kind of sketching I used to do in college. Houses, yes, but also people. Scenes. Ideas for places that didn't exist yet. I filled 3 sketchbooks in 2 months. And slowly, my confidence came back. At work, I turned the Carmichael project around. Finished ahead of the new deadline. Got a quiet nod of approval from my manager. I started packing meals for myself. Planning weekend hikes. Reading again, something other than emails and invoices. Rachel barely noticed. Or if she did, she didn't say anything. She was too wrapped up in playing family again with Greg. He started coming around more often. Fixing leaky sinks. Replacing light bulbs I used to change. I never confronted him. Never gave him the satisfaction. I just took notes. Mental ones. Dates, times, who paid for what. I was documenting everything now. Then one day, I came home to find Rachel in the kitchen, holding a manila envelope. "I need you to sign this," she said without looking up. "What is it?" She pushed it across the counter. "Authorization for Haley's student housing and emergency contact info. Since you're not covering tuition, they need it signed by a parent." I stared at her. "A parent?" I asked slowly. "Or the dad she likes this month?" Rachel sighed. "Martin, don't do this. Please." I didn't move. "You moved the money. You lied to my face. You let the guy who abandoned his own daughter back into her life without telling me. And now you want my signature so you can pretend we're still co-parents?" She didn't say anything. Just stood there, waiting. I didn't sign. Instead, I said 6 words that changed everything. "I want a separation." Effective immediately. Rachel froze. Her lips parted like she'd misheard me. "What?" "I'll be civil. I won't make a scene. But I want out. And I want it now." Her face shifted. Shock. Then fear. Then something cold and calculating. "You're overreacting." "Maybe," I said. "But that doesn't mean I'm wrong." The next day, I met with a lawyer. She was sharp, professional, and kind in a no-nonsense sort of way. After I laid out the entire situation, she just nodded and said, "You're not the first step-parent to get pushed out when the biology card gets played. But that doesn't mean you don't have rights, especially if you've contributed financially and emotionally for over a decade." We talked strategy. She advised me to collect all records of financial contributions, including household bills, school payments, medical expenses, anything that proved I'd been an equal partner in raising Haley. I already had half of it in my new safe. By the end of the meeting, I felt something unfamiliar. Hope. I didn't want revenge. Not yet. But I wanted fairness. I wanted peace. And most of all, I wanted my life back. A few weeks after filing for separation, I moved into a rental townhouse about 15 minutes away. It wasn't fancy, small, quiet, with an old maple tree in the front yard and just enough space to build a little workshop in the garage. But it was mine. The first night I slept there, I didn't dream. I just lay in bed, arms folded behind my head, listening to the silence. Not the tense, suffocating silence of my old house. This silence was clean, empty, free. A week later, Haley sent me a text. It was the first time she'd contacted me in over 2 months. "I heard you moved out. Guess I was right. You never really wanted to be part of this family." I didn't reply, because I was finally starting to realize something important. You can love someone with everything you have, and still walk away when they start using that love as a weapon. The day I moved into that little townhouse, something clicked inside me. Not like a switch being flipped, but like a weight finally being lifted. The kind you carry for so long, you forget what it feels like to stand straight. I unpacked slowly, methodically. Every item I chose to bring felt like a line in the sand. If it came with me, It had value. If not, it stayed behind. Rachel's photos? Gone. Haley's Father's Day cards? I kept those, but sealed them in a box and shoved them deep into a closet, like a wound I wasn't ready to look at yet. And then, I started plotting. I didn't call it revenge, not at first. It felt more like setting the record straight. Reclaiming what I'd given and what had been quietly stolen from me, both emotionally and financially. But deep down I knew, this wasn't just about justice. It was about closure. It was about building something so clean and sharp that when the time came, Rachel and Haley would have no choice but to look back and realize exactly what they'd thrown away. The first thing I did was contact my lawyer again. "You ready for the next steps?" she asked, flipping open her tablet during our meeting at her office. "Absolutely," I said, with a calm I hadn't felt in months. We reviewed everything. I showed her records, bank statements, tuition payments, birthday expenses, the logs I'd been keeping since the fallout began. I handed her printouts of text messages, receipts, even screenshots of Haley's email to Greg about the wire transfer. I was building a paper trail so airtight you could vacuum seal it. "Are you interested in pursuing any repayment for the college fund?" she asked. "Eventually," I said. "But for now, I want to focus on the separation assets. I want what's mine. Nothing more." We filed for asset division under separation terms, and since Rachel and I weren't officially divorced yet, and she'd drained the account after I'd voiced my objection to covering Haley's tuition, there was a strong argument that she'd mishandled joint funds. Now, here's where it gets interesting. During our initial years of marriage, I'd bought the house we lived in. Technically, it was in both our names, but the down payment came solely from my savings, years before I even met Rachel. We refinanced once after we got married, but I kept a copy of the original purchase documents and all my solo payment receipts from before we tied the knot. When I brought this up to my lawyer, her eyes lit up. "That's leverage," she said. "A judge will take note that you brought the majority of the equity into that property." I nodded. "Good. Because that house means nothing to me now. But it's the principle." She leaned back in her chair, one brow raised. "You sure this isn't about getting even?" "It's about making sure they know they didn't win," I replied. "Not really." From there, I got to work laying my chessboard. I started reaching out to people I'd distanced myself from during my years of trying to be the perfect stepdad. Old friends, co-workers, my cousin Derek, who used to be like a brother until Rachel decided he was immature and not the kind of influence Haley needed around. One by one, I reconnected, grabbed coffee, went to barbecues, rebuilt the network I'd sacrificed in favor of a family that never truly saw me. At one of those barbecues, something unexpected happened. I met Natalie. She wasn't a date. Not at first. She was Derek's friend from work, a freelance illustrator who showed up with a bottle of sangria and zero small talk. She was sharp, funny, and had this way of looking at you that made you feel like she'd already figured out the part of yourself you were trying to hide. We talked for almost 2 hours straight under a string of backyard lights while everyone else drank and played cornhole. At the end of the night, she asked, "You always look this serious, or is this just the post-divorce glow?" I laughed for real. The first genuine laugh I'd had in what felt like years. "Still figuring that out?" I said. We started texting, then grabbing coffee, then dinner. I wasn't ready to call it anything serious, and neither was she, but it felt good. Like discovering a new part of myself I didn't know existed. Meanwhile, back in the house I used to call home, things weren't going quite as smoothly. Greg had apparently started overstaying his welcome. Haley, thrilled to have her real dad back, had invited him to help her shop for dorm supplies. Then she asked if he could help her move into her dorm room. Then, according to what Rachel eventually admitted in a desperate email, he asked if he could stay in the house a few days a week when he was in town. I didn't reply to her email, but I sure did forward it to my lawyer. "Another brick for the wall," she said. Then came a real gift, a message from Rachel's former coworker, Janet. She'd always liked me, called me the grown-up version of a Labrador. Her words, not mine. She messaged me on Facebook one evening. "Hey, I heard about everything. I don't want to stir the pot, but I thought you should know. Greg's been bragging to people that Rachel's letting him stay over again. Like, overnight. Multiple times. I'm sorry. That was golden. You see, when we filed for separation, one of the stipulations we agreed to was that neither of us would bring a romantic partner to live in the shared home during the separation process. Rachel had insisted on it, probably assuming I'd move on first. So when I sent that message to my lawyer, her response was swift. Violation of agreement. Let's use it. We filed a motion requesting expedited financial review of the home assets and petitioned for primary control of the house based on Rachel's breach. It wouldn't necessarily mean I'd move back in, but it meant leverage. It meant potential buyout. And it meant Rachel's version of events was beginning to unravel in a court-recorded way. While the paperwork churned through the system, I made one more strategic move. Remember Haley's college fund? The one they stole from our joint account. I couldn't get it back, not directly, but I did find a loophole. See, I'd started a Roth IRA years ago under my name with additional college savings set aside. It was never merged with our other funds. Quietly, over the years, I'd continued contributing to it, even after Haley grew distant. Call it hope, or denial. That account, untouchable by Rachel. And I changed the beneficiary, not to spite Haley, but to protect myself. Then, I created a trust. Just a simple one, for now. But it had room to grow. And in that trust, I named 2 people as contingent beneficiaries. My godson Miles, Derek's kid, sharp as a whip and wants to be an engineer, and my niece Allison, who I'd barely seen since Rachel started icing out my side of the family. The message was clear. I wasn't done giving. I was just done giving to people who saw me as disposable. Meanwhile, Haley? She sent me one last message before leaving for Brightridge. You really showed your true colors, Martin. You'll regret this. I didn't reply, but inside I smiled, because I knew something she didn't. See, I called Brightridge a few weeks prior, not to block her enrollment, but to ask a simple question as the former financial contributor. What's the policy on tuition disputes or transfers if the funding source changes? Turns out, schools get very uncomfortable when they find out the source of tuition funds is under legal review. They don't like messy financials. I didn't pull the plug. I didn't need to. I just nudged the lever. And the next week, I heard from an old contact, someone who worked in the admissions office at Brightridge. Not close enough to break privacy rules, but close enough to offer me a tidbit during lunch. Funny thing, someone's dad made a lot of promises he couldn't keep. The kid's financial clearance is under review now. That was the moment I knew. They'd overplayed their hand. Rachel and Greg had spent months building a fantasy out of biology and betrayal. But I was done playing defense. I was drawing up blueprints now for something better, something permanent. The only question left was when to let the hammer fall. It all came together on a Thursday. Not a dramatic day. No thunderstorms. No ominous music. Just a crisp, cool afternoon in early fall. The kind of day where the air smells clean, like fresh starts and freshly raked leaves. It was fitting, honestly. Quiet. Controlled. Exactly how I wanted it. The revenge wasn't about explosions. It wasn't about shouting or name-calling or viral Facebook posts. It was about precision. About watching a tower fall slowly, brick by brick, until the people who built it realized it had no foundation. Let's start with the house. After months of legal back and forth, Rachel and I ended up in mediation to settle the division of assets. She showed up in a beige blazer that looked like she picked it out just to seem professional, sitting stiff in the chair across from me. Her lawyer, a guy with all the charisma of a soggy napkin, tried to argue that the house should remain hers for the sake of continuity and because Martin has already established new residence elsewhere. What he didn't expect was the mountain of documentation I'd brought showing that I was the one who purchased the home, made 85% of the mortgage payments over the years, paid for all renovations, and, here's the kicker, continued to contribute financially even after I'd moved out. Then came the violation of our agreement. The emails, the witness statements, the neighbor's testimony. She saw Greg's car parked overnight multiple times. I didn't have to exaggerate. I just told the truth, slowly and methodically, while her lawyer's face turned redder by the minute. By the end of the session, Rachel offered to sell her share to me in exchange for waiving any claim to my retirement account. I agreed, on one condition. I wanted in writing that neither Rachel nor Greg can reside in the property or use the address for any legal or financial purpose moving forward. She balked. That's unnecessary. I just looked at her, calm and unmoved. Then I walk away. I let the court decide, and I guarantee it won't end in your favor. She signed. A week later, I put the house up for sale. I didn't want it. Not really. Too many ghosts in the walls. But selling it was symbolic. A statement. I got multiple offers within 3 days. By the end of the month, it was sold. The profits? Mine. Not because I was vindictive, because I was smart. And because I finally played the game the way they had been playing it all along. Cold, calculated, and without apology. Now let's talk about Haley. Her tuition nightmare unraveled faster than I expected. You see, when Rachel transferred the funds to Greg to pay Haley's tuition, they never considered how universities vet financial contributions, especially when legal disputes arise. Once Bright Ridge flagged the source of her payment as potentially illegitimate, it triggered a review of her financial aid package. Greg, of course, hadn't actually paid yet. He'd promised to wire it, then delayed. Probably thought he had more time. But when the financial office reached out for confirmation and couldn't get a clear answer, they froze Haley's enrollment. She showed up at my townhouse 2 weeks later. First time in months. I opened the door and just stood there, arms crossed. Her eyes were puffy. She hadn't slept. "Can I come in?" she asked, voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. I stepped aside, not out of warmth, out of curiosity. She stood in the living room, looking around like she didn't recognize the place. Like she couldn't believe I'd built something without her. They dropped me from my dorm," she said quietly, "until the payment clears. But Greg said he sent it, and the school says they never got it." I didn't say anything. She took a breath. "I was wondering if you could maybe call them? Tell them it's being handled." I raised an eyebrow. Why would I do that? Her eyes welled up. "Because I need this. And I know I've been awful to you. But, no," I said, gently but firmly. "You weren't just awful. You erased me. You made a choice. You told people I wasn't your dad. You told Greg I was just some guy. And then you and your mother took money that didn't belong to you." She didn't deny it. She just looked down at her shoes. I leaned against the kitchen counter. "I'm not here to rescue you anymore. That chapter's over. You wanted your real dad? This is the part where he steps up." She didn't cry. Not exactly. But her mouth trembled. "I'm sorry," she whispered. And for the first time, I believed her. But that didn't mean I was going to fix it. "I hope you figure things out," I said. "Really. But I'm not your safety net anymore." She left without saying another word. And you know what? I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't gloat. I felt clean, like I'd finally stopped bleeding. Now, here's the part no one saw coming. Greg? He ghosted. After promising to pay Haley's tuition, he suddenly became unreachable. Rachel called, texted, emailed. Nothing. Turns out, he'd been using someone else's address to dodge back child support from another state. And when his name got tied up in the financial aid investigation at Bright Ridge, it triggered a deeper look into his finances. That's when everything blew up. Turns out, Greg owed close to $48,000 in unpaid support to another family. And thanks to the paper trail I helped trigger, accidentally or not, the state reactivated his case. He disappeared. Again. Classic. Rachel tried to hold it together, but the cracks were showing. Her emails turned frantic, then bitter, then silent. The final one she sent me simply said, "I hope you're happy. You've poisoned our family." I didn't reply, because I hadn't poisoned anything. I just stopped drinking the Kool-Aid. In the months that followed, I flourished. I finished my woodworking course and turned my garage into a full workshop. Started making custom pieces, coffee tables, benches, decorative shelving. People at work started placing orders. I wasn't looking to start a business, but it felt good to build something with my hands again. Natalie and I kept things simple. We saw each other once a week, then twice, then almost every weekend. She never asked too much, never rushed me, just existed with me in a space that felt light, free. My townhouse became a sanctuary. Warm lighting, clean wood, no ghosts, no passive aggression, no slammed doors. And for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. One day, I got a letter in the mail. From Haley. Handwritten. She told me she'd gotten a part-time job, that she was trying to re-enroll for the spring semester, that she was staying with a friend and figuring things out on her own. She apologized again, this time without expectations. She ended it with, "I know I broke something between us, maybe forever, but I just wanted to say thank you for being there, even when I didn't see it. I don't expect anything. I just hope you're doing okay." I didn't write back, not because I hated her, but because I finally understood something. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. I placed the letter in the same box as her old drawings and Father's Day cards. I closed the lid, tucked it away. Then I went outside, into the cool afternoon air, and watched the wind move through the trees. Peace isn't loud. It doesn't demand attention. It just arrives. And when it does, you know it. Like I did that day, when I stood on my porch, exhaling years of betrayal, bitterness, and heartbreak, and whispered to no one in particular. I made it out.